And when they receive the reply, the communication gets valued. Good communication helps to create an enjoyable environment which naturally produces the interest in the talk.
संचार की कला नेतृत्व की भाषा है. Communication is fundamental to the existence and survival of humans. It helps us to create and share ideas, information, facts, and feelings among the people to reach a common understanding. On this note, I would like to request my dear friend Mr. Dipanshu to deliver an introductory speech.
Dipanshu, please unmute yourself.
Sorry, ma'am. Good afternoon, Honorable Director, Professor Dr. Kumkum Ray, our Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. Madhura Mukhopadhyay, our Faculty Coordinators, Dr. Ibya Prasad and Dr. Archana Gupta, and all my dear audience. I extend very warm welcome to everyone present here. I likewise want to offer my sincere thanks to our esteemed chief guest, Dr. Madhura Mukhopadhyay, who has accepted our invitation to conduct this workshop for self-improvement. The workshop is organized to develop the LSRW skills of the learners. LSRW is the backbone of our society. It allows us to form connections, influence decisions, and motivate change. Without communication skills, the ability to progress in the working world, in life, would be nearly impossible. So today's event is on reading skills. When you are reading something, you will imagine so many wonderful things. Reading makes you curious to know more and explore more. It improves your vocabulary and enlightens us in many other ways. The habit of reading constantly motivates us to get our goal too. In fact, reading can help us in making us a champion too. It also helps your imaginative power to improve when it comes to creating and thinking. By creative and thinking, by reading, you are painting those picture of stories in your mind where books can take you anywhere you want to go. Reading is the best entertainment. Entertainment, love your books, libraries, because books can transport you anywhere you might never have imagined. Reading skills helps you to learn by hearing words. The more you hear, the more likely you are taught and understand what being said. Reading improves your ability to comprehend. Then why do you have a fear of speaking incorrectly? You can come overcome this fear by developing a habit of reading. A very important line said by Jacqueline Kennedy. There are many little ways to enlarge your world. Love of books is the best of all. Which means that you read, as much you read, you enlarge your world. As much you are develop your reading skill, imagine reading skill, your imagination, power, thought, and everything will be developed. Now, I would like to end this by saying four lines in Hindi. After that, my host Khyati Gupta and Kajal Singh will continue the event further. यही जज्बा रहा तो मुश्किलों का हल भी निकलेगा. कमी बंजर हुई तो क्या, वहीं से जल्द ही निकलेगा. ना हो मायूस, ना घबरा, अंधेरे से मेरे साथी, इन्हीं रातों के दामन से सुनहरा कल भी निकलेगा. थैंक यू एंड हैव अ ग्रेट डे.
Thank you, Mr. Dipanshu, for giving an insight of today's event. The world is full of diamonds and gems, and we have many of them with us today.
And now I would like to request distinguished director, Professor Dr. Kumkum Ray, who is the epitome of knowledge and wisdom, to address and enlighten us through her words. Over to you, ma'am. Ma'am, you are on mute.
Ma'am, please unmute yourself.
Namaskar, good morning, pranam. First and foremost, I'm delighted to have with us today Dr. Madhura Mukhopadhyay. And I'm so glad, ma'am, that you could take out time for our students, our participants, and all of us. We have been waiting to hear your madhur awaz.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It's my absolute pleasure.
Yes, thank you. We are greatly indebted to you for giving us your valuable time. So, my fellow colleagues, senior and junior, dear students and participants, on this day, the fourth day of our workshop, we have come a long way in understanding how our communication has to be not only truthful, but also has to have the use of right words in speaking, writing, and conveying. And with this, I would now leave the platform to Dr. Madhura to hear her sweet words. And, I must congratulate you, Dr. Madhura, that as per National Education Policy 2020, culture, translation, and the pride for nationhood has taken a precedence in communication. Therefore, your presentation today will help our participants and all of us on this platform today to relate to our culture and how we communicate. For I very often quote Maithili Charan Gupta, the famous poet, जिसको न निज गौरव तथा निज देश का अभिमान हो, वो नर नहीं, नर पशु निरा और मृतक समान हो. Means, if we do not have a pride in our nation, in our culture, we are nothing. So over to you, Dr. Madhura Mukhopadhyay. Welcome and thank you so much once again.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your extremely gracious words. I'm audible and visible both.
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Yes, ma'am, yes.
Thank you so much, Amity University, Lucknow, because you are Assistant Concerned Professor Roy, uh, my dear colleagues and lovely students. It's very nice to meet you early in the morning. So I'll be starting with my presentation, and I will be sharing my presentation. Just once in a while, do inform me if there is any problem regarding the sharing. So just tell me if you can see the PowerPoint presentation being shared. Are you able to see it?
Sorry for interruption, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, this is Dr. Archana Gupta.
Yes,
Ma'am,
Dr.
our
Gupta.
students would like to introduce you and would like to welcome you through their
Oh,
words of
okay, please
appreciation.
go
Please
ahead.
give them a chance.
Oh, yes. Thank you
Thank
so
you, ma'am.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, my dears.
Yes, Kathy, please.
So, thank you, ma'am, Kumkum ma'am, for gracing the occasion with your kind words, and you always inspire us a lot. So, before moving ahead, let's do an activity. And I promise you, there will be opportunities for you all to participate and practice some things because I believe the way we become effective communicators is by actually communicating. So, let's get started right away. I'd like to ask you all to read the sentence. I hope it is visible on your screens. I request to change the slide, please. The slide which states the sentence. Okay, so I'd like to ask you all to read this sentence. And as you read the sentence, what's most important to me is that you count the number of F's. The previous slide, please. Yes. So you need to count the number of F's you find in this sentence. Please count the number of Fs. Keep it quiet to yourself. Time is ticking. Okay, so time up. Now I request the audience to raise their hands if they found 3 Fs and only 3 Fs. Please raise your hands. Okay, that's great. Did anybody find 4 Fs? Okay, that's pretty great amount. Okay, did anybody find 6 Fs? There were 6 Fs. What the 2-letter words ending in F many of us did miss? It's off. So what was the purpose of this activity? This activity was performed because this is a perfect analogy for what we have been talking since the day 1 of this workshop. The effective communication. The vast majority of us in this meeting, very smart people in this meeting, were not as effective as we could have been in this activity. We did not get it right. And the same is true when it comes to communicating in public, particularly when it is spontaneous. It's little things that make a big difference in being effective. So this was the purpose of this activity. Now I request Khyati to please proceed.
Okay. Now I would like to request my junior, Miss Millie Singh, to come and present her presentation. Is she here?
Jim Rohn once said, "Reading is essential for those who seek to rise above the ordinary." Good morning to each and everyone present here. Today, I, Millie Singh, is going to give the presentation on the topic, the relevance of reading in contemporary times. Now let us discuss what is reading. The act or activity of one that reads. To write is to read. The ability or practice of rendering aloud written or printed matter. Dr. Seuss once said, "The more you read, the more things you know. The more that you learn, the more places you'll go." Human beings wanted to pass on their knowledge even after their death for a better future. Reading always creates second perspective different from your own perception of things and keeps you intact. In life learning, things will always take you a step ahead. Learning can be anything, but you will surely be skeptical about your own decisions. Next slide, please. Now, from where can you encounter reading? It can be through lectures, presentations, or tutorials. It can be through coursework, research, or the internet. It can be through the blackboard or the course documents. It can be at work or at home. Next slide, please. Now, what is the importance of reading in today's world? Learning to read is about listening and understanding, as well as working out what is printed on the page. Reading informs writing and writing style. Reading is important because it develops our thoughts, gives us endless knowledge and lessons while keeping our minds active. It develops knowledge of language structure. The importance of a book to help us learn and understand things cannot be underestimated. Reading develops vocabulary. When reading, you might come across certain words you don't understand or you don't even recognize. Well, after several days of reading and looking up for new words you don't understand, your vocabulary will start to expand one word at a time. Can words, paragraphs, and fictional worlds be all that great for you and your health? It definitely can. And reading is a timeless form of entertainment and information. It enhances your imagination and empathy. Although the enhancement of imagination is not one of the more common benefits, reading can significantly increase your imagination. Reading books is all due to the stimulation of the brain the reading induces. The imagination is what allows us to be empathetic with people. Next slide, please. Essential skills needed for reading comprehension. Reading comprehension is simply the ability to understand what you read. Several elements like fluency, the ability to decode unfamiliar vocabulary, and using context clues from the reading to identify key features of a text can all be the components of effective reading comprehension. Fluency. Fluency refers to a mix of different factors. It focuses on your ability to read clearly with flow. Decoding is a skill that relies your ability to sound out words you have heard but never written out. The ability to decode or determine the new words can also influence your reading comprehension. Inference is also a key element of reading comprehension. When we make inferences, we are connecting information from text to our own ideas and opinions that help us identify the meaning of what we read. Reading comprehension is typically all about retaining what we read. Next slide, please. Now, in today's world, how can one improve their reading skills? One of the most effective ways to build your skills is to practice. Develop your reading skills will ultimately take practice. Set aside time to read each day. You can set reading goals for yourself to help you develop a wider vocabulary, gain a deeper sense of understanding. Previewing and scanning your text can be another step towards improving your reading skills. As you read through different texts, practice determining the purpose. Think about why certain texts were written. As you use different texts, you can apply several key strategies to help you increase your comprehension. Summarizing what you read can also improve your reading skills. It forces you to remember specific details and central topics about what you read in your own words. Next slide, please. Now, talking about reading in contemporary times. The increasing technological developments currently have an impact on the world of education, especially in early reading learning. Reading is essential for everybody, especially in the 21st century. People will need to read an email, text, or messages from the phone, referring to the grocery list, or for the simplest act of all, ordering food from the menu. If they cannot read, they have to ask someone to read for them. Digital reading platforms can enhance the reading experience by providing visuals, embedded questions, and prompts. Support such as vocabulary inserts and hyperlinks that add support and extend deepen comprehension. Next slide, please. Reading is an important 21st century skill because society needs it in order to be able to communicate, to grow into smarter and kinder intellectuals, and also be able to participate in the civic government. Young adults and even older adults need reading in order to be involved in the civic government. This means getting a driver's license, voting, and any other political activity available for society to partake in. Reading about the world around us helps us in becoming better national and global citizens. Next slide, please. Now that brings me to the end of my presentation. I am glad to be a part of this workshop. I would like to thank the faculties for giving me this opportunity. I would like to thank to everybody for listening me so patiently. Thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay home.
Thank you so much, Miss Millie. That was really a great presentation and informative as well. We feel honored to have with us the Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. Madhura Mukhopadhyay. Ma'am, you hardly need any introduction. You have already made all of us proud of your distinguished work in numerous capacities. But still, I would like to request my lovely junior Miss Anushka from ASL to address our respective chief guests and enlighten us with her works.
A very hearty welcome to all the dignitaries here. I, Anushka Biswas, a student of English Honours from second year, welcome you all to the National Workshop on Communication Skills and Survival on behalf of the Amity School of Languages, Amity University, Lucknow. I find immense pleasure in introducing our honorable chief guest, Dr. Madhura Mukhopadhyay. Dr. Madhura is a faculty and researcher whose area of interest lie in soft power diplomacy and its effects on both internal and external policies related to cultural studies and politics. Having completed her MA in English from JNU New Delhi, she has completed her MPhil and PhD from JNU New Delhi on cultural politics of Canadian theatre and its implications. She has continued to work in the field of Southeast Asian soft power diplomacy, cultural and literary practices, and the use of mass media and technology in South Asia and Southeast Asian countries. Recipient of the Canadian Commonwealth Research Fellowship 2012. Ma'am, I feel honored that I was given this opportunity to speak about you and your accomplishments. On behalf of everyone, we feel honored to have you at our effective communication workshop. I hope today many of us will be able to seek a little guidance from your thoughts. I would now request Dr. Madhura Mukhopadhyay to enlighten the audience with the precious words as we begin with the event. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Anushka. That was very lovely. I mean, never been introduced like that. Thank you so much, dear. Now, can I start with the presentation then, right now? So, I'll be sharing my document. Just please do tell me if it is visible from your end. Is it visible from your end?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Thank you. Now, the idea of communications that I will be talking about is communications and cultural studies, why, and its implications on not just interpersonal relations, but it is the relation between countries, nations, the entire idea today, because as we grow up, today you all are actually growing up in a world where the reality is a shifted reality. It is no more a person meeting another person, but a person rather using technology to, I will use the word meet in a quote. So within quotations, you're meeting another person. So in this case, and how does it affect culture? How does it affect our study of various cultures around the world right now? Now, so language is a means of international communications. As you all are, you must all be quite, I mean, you are all students, so you're aware of the word communication. Not only is it an exchange of idea, if you look at the etymology of communication, the Latinate word meant communicare. So communicare was sharing. Then it developed again in Latinate terms as to communicatio, which is again a sharing, but a more formalized form of sharing. Then the word developed into the French word communication, where communication meant not just sharing. By that time, information. Earlier it was interpersonal sharing, then it became a formalized form of sharing. Today it is a cultural, a socio-political idea also. And so language has become an imperative idea of human cognitive powers, because if you look at this idea, you're using your cognition. As you grow older, language becomes a part of your identity and reasoning. Because the language today, fortunately being born in India, most of us are bilingual. Very few countries in the world can boast of this idea that we are bilinguals. But Indians are not only bilinguals, we're often trilinguals. We speak in 3-4 languages. And that is the best part about the diversity of this country, with a lot of languages, a lot of linguistic dialects, derivations. I mean, in the Hindi heartland itself, you move 10 feet and the dialect changes, right? So, and we have also come from this rich tradition of Sanskrit and Tamil, two of the oldest languages of the world. So, what we see is that with language, there is not just communication, there is a development of human cognitive powers, reasoning. If you look at our older texts, that reasoning was, I mean, be it in Tamil or in Sanskrit, the older the text, the older you will see the development going through. And therefore, there was a peak that we reached at one point of time, right? Now, after that, we are using communication as a sense of recognition. How? Because especially language is used as a sense of recognition. This can be used in both personal as well as a political and as a cultural term. Personally, the idea of recognition first comes when, as you grow older, a child learns a language. For the first time, the child realizes the word I, the individual. I am not you. If I take linguists like Jacques Lacan went on to say in the mirror stage that there is the I, and the I comes with the cognition of language. Because a child, by the time it learns language, the child realizes the child is a self and not the other. That's the recognition. Now, if you take that and put it into the societal framework, in the societal framework, recognition through language is both political and cultural. How? Politically, it is there's a linguist, Charles Taylor. No, I'm sorry, there's a political scientist, Charles Taylor. Now, Charles Taylor, in the 1970s, a Canadian political scientist, in the 1970s, he came up with this word called political recognition. So, political recognition of any country, any nation, is built on the idea of its culture, its linguistic identity, its socio-political identity. So today, as Indians, the way we are known as Indians because of the use of language, because of the way we are culturally promoted and the way we promote ourselves through a culture, and the political identity of being an Indian. But it is all done through the means of communication and language. Even interpretation is a form of communication, because if I know a language and you know a language and we do not share or our communication is somehow halted because of the loss of that language connection, we use an interpreter. That brings in a new form of communication, a new form of identity, but the communicare or the communicatio continues. Now we look at as I said in the earlier times, Sanskrit, Tamil, the entire older oeuvre or the milieu of language went on. There was then with that in India especially, new languages came up, whether it be through trade, through invasion, because so you have a Megasthenes, you have Greek influences in the languages, you have Chinese influence in the languages, you have the growing of Urdu coming from Persian, you have Hindi becoming I would say, because earlier there was Avdhi, Maithili, these various dialects being used, and then a standardized Hindi becoming there. So, in fact, a lot of standardization languages took place, but with that came colonization, parallelly, simultaneously. With colonization, there was a shift in language and a shift in communications. For the first time, language became a tool of power. Why? Because, I won't say the first time, because earlier, yes, language was a tool of power, but we do see newer languages cropping up, like Urdu, which is a mixture of Hindi and localized language and Persian. So many other kinds of languages like that also grew up. But with colonization, with the British coming to India, there was a clear-cut division between language and a language hierarchy coming up, right? So, because whether it be Macaulay's speech, Macaulay pointing out how British education was important for India, we see that there's a clear division of what language would be for the natives and what language would be for the colonizer. And we see that there was a huge sense of Eurocentrism there, because the British themselves took that language from the Greeks, from the Romans, from the French. And with that, we have this idea, because Shakespeare is lauded today because he added at least 80% of the words which you find in English literature. And he was influenced by the French, by the Renaissance, by the Italians. And the Italians were, of course, the Renaissance was the rebirth of language coming in from the Greeks and the Romans. So in India also, language remained. By the time the colonization came in, India already used language as a form of international communication. Before that, there was interpreters, definitely. The Dutch came to India, the French came to India, the Portuguese came to India, the Spaniards came to India. But with British colonization, what we see is that language became not only a part of international communication, it was internalized. That this is a form of language which would be used as a form of political identity. So a deeply Eurocentric approach to language was there. Then we have the post-colonial idea. From Eurocentric language today, we have moved on to an international sphere where we are using the word Indian writing in English. The moment we're using the word Indian writing in English, it is a very deeply post-colonial development. It is simply not the empire writing back as we speak about it, where the Griffith and Tiffin, the empire writes back. This was Griffith, Tiffin and Ashcroft's idea. So it is simply not an empire writing back. It is today a part of our identity. So, and today with localized use of language, so today you have Indian writing in English, you have African writings, you have Caribbean writings, we have Irish writings. Despite its proximity with Britain, Irish writing is very different. And this has given rise, if you look at this, it has led to the rise of new cultures and technology. How has it given rise to new cultures and technology? Because today in the post-colonial world, and today we have moved on from the post-colonial towards a postmodern rendition of language. Therefore, technology is now a very integral part of communications. The very fact that I am sitting here in Delhi and you are in Lucknow, and we are speaking to each other through what is technically a black box, that is use of language communication and a very different cultural identity if you look at it. From one part, because my localized cultural identity here will be different from your localized cultural identity there, but we're still using technology to communicate. So communication takes place, and this is exactly what international relations will talk about. International communication is also about. You're talking. And finally, in the post-globalized world, India was introduced to a globalized world by the 1990s. And at that point of time, in the post-globalized world, usage of language through the internet and the mass media changed our cultural ethos at times, changed our socio-political identities at times, right? And even the radio. At one point of time, the radio was one of the mediums of mass media. Every house had a radio. Today, we have moved on from the radio to the television to the internet. Your generation is more comfortable with the internet than it is with the television. The internet, because television at one point of time opened up a panorama of images for us. It brought the world into basically our bedrooms, our dining rooms, our drawing rooms. In fact, it might even be called the kitchen. But television brought a world outside and again gave a sense of recognition that the self and the other, a sense of identity, was created through culture, language, and communications. Now, today, if we look at the language in postmodern era, look at the symbolic intent of language. Today, language is no more simply learning a language matrix and using it. It is becoming a very hybrid connotation filled with images. So, if we look at it, earlier a hybridity in culture would, as Bhava would point out, the hybridity of culture would be a result of maybe immigration, of migration, of even an exodus. But today there is a lot of subcultures growing up because of language, because of technology. Is this visible, this advertisement? Can you see this, all of you? There's this MTV, IKEA, a logo of Mercedes-Benz. Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am, it is visible.
All right. Now here I would just like an input from you. All of you, these are logos of various products today. I'm sure you're all familiar with them, right? This one, say a Pepsi, a Burger King, a Nivea, a Sony, an Adidas, a Canon, right? An MTV. So if you're looking at this, today if you close your eyes and think of a symbol, you immediately have a story behind it, right? Yet, as my second point points out, language is a result of economic derivation today. Today, if I use the word, let's get this Xeroxed. You get a piece of paper, you want to get a copy of it, and you say, go to the Xerox center and get it Xeroxed. Today, a photocopier has become a Xerox. Xerox was the company which produced the machine, a photocopy, right? But look at the way the symbol has interchanged. When you look at these colors of, say, this a Pepsi, it automatically becomes a symbol of a cola or something like that. I mean, when I look at this symbol of a bear and a bear, the first thing that comes to my mind is pesticide, because technically this is for me, all around me, there would be this bear and bear would be used as killing mosquitoes and everything. But of course, they produce other things, a Coca-Cola, an Amazon. So they have, especially in, there's if you look at it in the cultural Frederick Jameson in 1991 went on to propound that if you look at the rise of late capitalism, that is, today the world is actually, languages are used with the idea of products. And the funny part is, we do not remember the name of the origins of these products. Today for us, a Pepsi has become, say, a Dil Mange More, a phrase. It is no more an American product for us, or a McDonald's. It has got a McDonald's is a burger which you find everywhere. In fact, you don't even need to go to a McDonald's. You go, if you walk the streets, there will be little food carts which will have a burger. But the burger is an American connotation. But look at the way it has influenced our language. It has become part of it. And okay, the best example of culture and its effect, of the international effect within India, would be a Maggi. It is the most ubiquitous food item that you will find anywhere in India. In the hills you go, there'll be a Maggie shop. But the idea is, and I am it is, Maggie is what? It is a product by Nestle, a Swiss company, where you do not know a word of Switzerland, but it has become localized in its entire perception, and all of this it is going on through culture and through language and communication, a constant bombardment of images which have now replaced language. Now, so language has now become a part of the hyperreal. If you look at it, it is no more the real in the sense earlier people would see things. We might see that art is removed from reality, but at the same time there is a representation of reality. But in today's world, where replication is the norm, as I keep on saying, it is not the real me that you're seeing through. It is a replication, an image that you're seeing on the other side through technology. So the hyper-real has become more real. So their language has now shifted from its idea of origin, and it is slowly encompassing the economics and the politics of it. So it is moving away from reality as well. And therefore, it is because of the era of advertisements, simulations. So a linguist, a postmodern linguist, Baudrillard, he went on to talk about simulations or simulacra. That is, whatever you see in front of you is a simulation. It is a replication. You take a photograph, you take a selfie, and that can be part of your identity 20 years down the line. But by that time, your language, your communication would have changed. It would be, you will not be the same you in that photograph 20 years down the line. It is a simulation. Your language will change. All right? Is my sharing gone? Are you able to see the screen, all of you?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Okay. Now, the next. So today popular culture and language. If you look at popular culture, today popular culture is like this, that and especially in diplomacy, language is becoming a brilliant. Look at the Oxford Dictionary. Words like guru have become part of the dictionary. Words like yoga. Of course, they've added an A to it. It's yoga, so they've added an A to it. The British idea. If you look at, oh yes, if I'm not sure how many of you are aware of Southeast Asian, say, culture. Like, I mean, there's this band, South Korean band called BTS. It has become hugely popular all over the world. I mean, they were on the cover of Time magazine for four covers. And these magazines were, and this group, the BTS group, they sang in the Korean language, and they were hugely popular in America. So you see, language has now transcended through culture, and it is a very effective part of diplomacy, and this is known as soft power diplomacy. In fact, the idea of soft power has been adopted by India as well. Bharatanatyam was used as, or even today is being used, our dance, our cultures have been used as a part of soft power diplomacy. Pandit Ravi Shankar playing music out of India. So then again, when you have, say, today, if, I mean, Madonna, you are a generation after Madonna, but Madonna once made the bindi very popular. She wore a bindi for an interview. So our cultural inputs have become part of diplomacy through language. And Bhangra, last month, in a newspaper article, Bhangra has now become a part of music classes in Britain. So we are seeing, it is not that as if every person understands Bhangra in Britain, or the language, the Punjabi language. So it has become part of it. And this is all part of soft power diplomacy. Now, Joseph Nye, a diplomat and also professor of political science, used a term for the first time, because there are two kinds of power in international diplomacy. One is your military strength. Your army is your military strength. But that is coercion. One cannot keep on fighting. One has to have soft power diplomacy, because soft power diplomacy is an absolutely essential part today. The UN, or rather UNESCO, and various other organizations promote soft power diplomacy. So you use language, and today think about it. I think in CBSE schools, a lot of foreign languages are being introduced. Be it Japanese, be it Korean, be it Mandarin, be it German, be it, I think, French. And in Amity yourself, you're learning a lot of languages. So this idea of language is being introduced as soft power communications. And culture is a result of that. Are you able to see this picture of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
I hope you know who it is.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
A name would help. Who's this? I mean, not the actor. I need the character's name.
The character is Harry Potter.
Absolutely.
Very famous.
Yes, ma'am. It's Harry Potter.
Absolutely. So think about this. J.K. Rowling wrote it in English for the British population about a young boy going to a British school, which is technically Eton, the school that they showed there, and the Trinity College. But it's a boy on a broom. Does it have any cultural connotation with, say, your localized culture? Actually not. But look at this. The idea has been a shared culture. Today, this idea for Harry Potter, I mean, Quidditch, the game that he's playing, and nobody's ever heard of it. If I spoke about that to my father, he would say, what is this? Hockey khelna tha hum logo? Right? So this idea is because there's a shift in culture, and this is through diplomacy, mind you, diplomacy and economics. Now we come to this idea. Cultural communication and economy. Because look at it, post our independence, post globalization, with the opening up of the markets, today all around you there is a rise of cultural products, right? And we're making use of it, all of these cultural products. And with it are coming up newer literatures in translation or otherwise. So, see, a Yukio Mishima, we read it in translation, or a Murakami. If you look at, Murakami is now becoming very, very popular. And Salman Rushdie is as popular in the West. Amitabh Ghosh is as popular in the West. So, and even a Qureshi, all of this, what we are seeing is that there is a mingling. And this is because of the rise of cultural products on the one side, and you have these glocalized words in say, a Rushdie's text. Rushdie's text has words like gamcha. Now, I am sure nobody in a native person in, say, the US or Canada or the UK would not know what a gamcha is. But he has no apologies for it. He says this is the word that they have to learn, and it has come into the lexicon as well. Similarly, so Amitav Ghosh's, if you look at C.F. Poppy's, look at the number of words that have come into and gone into other texts. Now, and it is also because of technology. As your previous presenter spoke about reading, if you look at the idea of reading today you're not just reading a book, you are reading Twitter novels. It is an anomaly. I am yet to understand the paradox of a Twitter novel, because a novel for me is a big thing. But apparently you can write a Twitter novel in 18 words. I still don't know how. So that would be a haiku for me, a Japanese form of poetry. But a Twitter novel. Then you have Facebook stories, you have Instagram, you're telling stories through pictures, and other OTT platforms, right? So today the mass media and everything has changed, especially in the post-pandemic world, everything has changed. And there is an increase in foreign merchandise. As I said, McDonald's. McDonald's is there in almost every city, every place, every metropolitan city you go to in India. And for me, A very localized form of McDonald's would be an Mac Aloo Tikki burger. I mean, McDonald's never thought. McDonald was a Scottish man settled in America, but the burger is American, therefore. The aloo tikki would definitely be Indian. So what we see is a localization of products, a localization of language. The newer thing that you're coming up is manga. Manga is graphic art, graphic comics. When we were young, we read these comics like Bahadur, Phantom, Mandrake. Today, it has suddenly become a Death Note or a Codebreaker or a Bleach, a Naruto. But manga is extremely popular and is selling because it is easily available online. And it is therefore being able to influence the culture and the language of of both India and the other way around. Today, the world is aware of a Chota Bheem. Similarly, if you look at anime, I mean, when I think it was in 2007 or 8, the first Animax channel was shown on television. I don't know, 2006 or 7, I'm sorry, something like that. And the world changed at that point of time. Now, post-pandemic interpretations. This is, you all know this little cat?
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, I still adore this cat, Tom. So this is a meme actually came out that World War II happened and Australia has finally stopped burning. That was the meme because Australia had a huge forest fire. And then suddenly Tom is happy. He looks out and the thing that hits him on the face is the coronavirus. Today, the post-pandemic world has changed interpretations and communications drastically. Be it in the world outside or here. Why? Today we use terms like work from home, social distancing, and isolation. If before the pre-pandemic times I had used the word isolation, I would technically have meant someone who just was alone. Today the word isolation comes with a medical implication, right? Similarly, quarantine, lockdown. Earlier lockdowns were used in the form of military or factories. Today a lockdown means an entire country being shut down for some time, right? So all of this is changing. And finally, so new economies are being built up with culture and communication and newer interpretations. So any queries or questions here, till here? I'm done with my presentation. After this, I'll just have a very small activity with you people.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, we will be posting the questions in the chat box.
Oh, so if you could read them out to me, then that would be wonderful.
Yes, ma'am, we will.
I request the audience, if they have any questions, to please raise their hands or post their questions in the chat box. We can deliver it to ma'am. Okay, ma'am. There is one participant raising hand.
Oh, yes, please go ahead. Yes, please.
Good morning, ma'am. This is Ilma Khan.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Ma'am, you talked about language transcending communication, and that was like really beautiful. As we too are fans of Korean dramas and Chinese dramas, but in a certain span of time, I have been seeing that Indians have lost interest in their own Bollywood dramas and soap operas, and they have been drifting towards South Asian themes, as everybody can notice. And I think that due to this, we have been like we had great people. We had Dilip Kumar and we had Meena Kumari, and but we have lost interest in Gulzar, and now we are all about BTS and Taylor Swift, and that is something which hurts me because even though South Asians and Americans have been transcending communication through their own regional languages, Urdu and Hindi being such beautiful languages, even we have so many languages, but still it is not working for us. So, can you please elaborate on this theme?
All right, thank you, my dear. There are two ways in which you can approach this problem. First and foremost, if you look at it this way, we must appreciate the fact that, say, South Korea, Japan, they have put in so much effort, be it policy wise or be it personally, in promoting a language and giving scholarships and funds. On the other hand, they have been doing it religiously since 1974. They actually came up with the Japan came up with this entire idea called Cool Japan. It is a policy of the Japanese government. You can look it up on the sites, Cool Japan. On the other hand, Bollywood was big. I mean, if I remember when Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge was released, Switzerland suddenly became the place where all Indians wanted to visit, right? But with time, there's another thing. We have moved towards a realism. If you look at today, Bollywood, more than popular blockbusters, today you would be watching a Gangs of Wasseypur on a Netflix, right? Or what is or an Amazon Prime, you would be watching a movie there. And from there onwards, because there is no question, we have to keep up with the changing world scenario. The West had a, let's say, I won't just say the West because it is also Southeast Asia. They had good, I mean, they were ahead of us and they were able to embrace the idea of OTTs and these kind of platforms. But India needs to have, I mean, at least for us, we need to be able to promote them. And I know for sure that Lucknow has this Urdu festival every year, Urdu Poetry Festival, because I have heard, I mean, Gulzar, Javed Akhtar, they have all gone there, and well, I couldn't go there, and in the Jaipur Literature Festival. So these are the places, and you watch it. But I was on YouTube, so with time, if we want to promote it, we also have to make it more relevant, more socially and culturally relevant today, because your generation is much more aware. We can sell dreams, but we have to sell more realistic dreams. That is what I mean, is my personal take on it. So Bollywood has been selling dreams, and there have been beautiful movies. I mean, till the 1970s and the 80s, I would say the 70s and the 80s. So there would be a movie like Golmaal, which is talking about unemployment. Not the Golmaal that you're watching now in Bollywood, but say an Utpal Dutt there. Or you are watching a movie like Rajnigandha. It's about a young woman going to work and coming back. So these were socially relevant movies, and they were as popular. And at the same time, so was Rajesh Khanna's popular, or an Amitabh Bachchan's, and G was as popular. The angry young man coming in, kitchen sink realism coming in. So maybe we are just grappling with a stage where we have to move away from conventional and maybe move on to something which is more innovative. I think that is all. And if people like you are willing to go through your own vernacular, like I'm a Bengali, so I read a lot of my own vernacular. So I'm sure this will help in translation, because we now have a common language. We're speaking in English. So even translations would help in reaching out with communications and languages. I hope that satisfies your query.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Yes. Khyati had a question. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, as you already told that why language is such an important part in cultural development, even if you don't understand Korean language, you enjoy Korean song. But how does it takes an important role in capitalism? Like, it does not matter what country you belong or what is your native language. Just because you need to speak English, it helps you to globalize your platform or your community.
Okay, so today the language that you use is the language that is supposed to, think about it as you grew up. The language that you use is supposed to be the one which is the trading language. All right. So because of colonization, a lot of part of the world started speaking in a particular form of language. So it was either English or French or maybe Spanish, right? But with time, with changing economies, we are a growing economy, with changing economy. Today, a Fulbright scholar, the FLTA, the Fulbright scholar goes and teaches Hindi in the US. Today, Punjabi is a language in the Canadian Embassy. It is one of the languages there. So it is a growing economy, and therefore the language will influence. But it also depends on which localized language you're using. I mean, in Canada, a lot of Andhra people are there, especially in the entire French region of Montreal and Quebec. There is a lot of liaison officers there are supposed to speak in Telugu. So it is very important to know. I mean, not just learn, but learn the implications of that language. I mean, this activity that I wanted to show it is not just an activity. It was simply, I'd like to show you a couple of images, and I would just like to ask your opinion about them to see how it has changed. May I do that now? Or
Yes,
if there are any
ma'am.
queries, I can go ahead with it, but may I do
Yes,
that now?
no, ma'am. No queries. You can go ahead.
Okay, just a second then. Please tell me if you can see my screen.
Yes,
Oh,
ma'am. It is visible.
can you? Wait, oh, great. This one has to be shown. Just a second. It's gone from. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, ma'am.
These are two images which are extremely popular today. Can you tell me what they are, the two images?
Ma'am, one is Hello Kitty and the second one is Superman. These both are the anime ones.
Yes. Now, Hello Kitty. Anything else about these images that strikes you? Anything?
Ma'am, it shows the two sides of a person. One is soft and one is tough. It
Good.
both depends on the situation.
Absolutely perfect. Anything else? Anything? Others? Whatever comes to your mind.
Ma'am, one is generally preferred by girls, whereas the other is preferred by boys according to the laws of gender conformity.
Very nice. Very nice. So, you.
Or
Go ahead. Go ahead. Good.
also, we can say what society expects from us to like. They want girls to like Hello Kitty, to prefer to watch it, and they want boys to watch more manly things.
Very nice.
Yes, ma'am, I do agree that it shows that how society has labeled men and women to act because of their gender and not as others, because men are supposed to act hard and tough and women is soft and gentle.
Good. Very good. Anyone? Any other queries? Anybody? Anybody can pitch in and tell me what do you think about it?
I think it also talks about the sudden change of interest. Like usually in our elementary years, we like Hello Kitty, be it the boys or the girls. But then as we grow up in puberty and puberty hits up, we get into Marvel and Superman comes up.
Wonderful. Now think about it. You all gave me a cultural interpretation, a gendered interpretation, right? You also gave me an economic interpretation in a way. Okay, now let me think about Hello Kitty. Hello Kitty, look at the source of origin. Japanese, 1970s. By the time Japan had already adopted the soft power policies. Superman, American, rough, tough, right? So already the idea of the nation itself is also being shown what they want to promote through diplomacy. They want to show up it through images, through symbolism, through language. Second, these are all commercial economic activity. I mean, if you look at it, as I said, with time, we have moved away. They have become so ingrained into our culture that I don't see a Bahadur anymore on the train station Wheeler stands. There used to be these Wheeler, the company Wheeler would have this book kiosks in stations. But you can get a Superman there now. So one is that. Yes, gendered, definitely. You all gave gendered interpretation. What struck me was, this is the newest, there is one edition of the Superman which came out after the racial killing in America. This man is black. So this idea, today the Superman, they attract. So the idea was that there will also be racial implications. So you see how times are changing with images, language, communication. And this has diplomacy also involved in it. So I just wanted to give you an example of what an image could bring up, the implications of it, especially in soft power diplomacy. So thank you, everyone. I think that wraps up my presentation today. So thank you all. This would be all from my side then.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was really a great presentation, and thank you for sharing your thoughts. And we all know that language is such an important part of communication, but the way you explained it in both globalization and others way, it really helped us a lot. Over to you, Kajal.
Okay, so now I would like to call Ms. Navya Srivastav to deliver the vote of thanks and conclude today's event on a beautiful note. I would like to mention that Ms. Navya Srivastav, fabulous at oratory, has won many debatable discussions held at college level. She has also been a very promising student at academics. Over to you, Navya.
Thank you so much, Kajal, for your kind words. I am so grateful to have been chosen to deliver the vote of thanks today. A bright and graceful afternoon to our extremely efficient and distinguished Director Professor, Dr. Kumkum.
Navya, excuse me. Still, we are having time. We are having time. Let the audience ask questions and let the discussion continue for some more time because we have the chief guest with us. It is our duty to ask questions and clarify our doubts because so many students are having doubts and only then we can learn. It's a one-time opportunity for us to meet the chief guest. Are going to meet again, we do not know. So let us make use of our expertise. Please come out with questions. Navya, you can wait.
I would request you all to post your queries in chat box so our chief guest can answer it.
I think the students' doubts have all been cleared, and there are hardly any. So, if you have any more queries, that's a wonderful platform, and we are privileged to have Dr. Madhura. So, you can go ahead in case you have no clarifications, Dr. Prasad. We can end on that note because the students seem to be quite saturated and quite happy with everything. It's so clear and so simple. And thanks to Dr. Madhura that everything was so well brought out in utter simplicity without any complications that the students have understood at the first instance alone.
Madam, just one question from my side. Just one question.
Sure. If there are questions, most welcome.
You talked about culture and communication, and you talked about the changes that are happening right now. Is this a temporary phenomenon, or this will continue for some more time?
So this is absolutely going to continue because, in fact, it is a very welcome change in the fact that today, if we look at any form of language, a language can only grow if it assimilates. And if you look at it, think of the English language itself. It has assimilated and it keeps on assimilating a lot of words from various cultures. Similarly, today, I mean, I mean, especially for Indian languages, I mean, there have been in Mysore, there is a central government institution there which looks into languages, and they've come up after I think some 10 to 12 years, they've come up with a huge volume of the various languages of India and the dialects, and we really need to start speaking in our vernaculars because otherwise it would be lost. Every day, at least 5 to 10 dialects are being lost in India. So the only way to survive would be assimilate and let the languages grow. And the pandemic has actually given us most of the bad, I mean, the pandemic has given us, I would say, a lot of hardships, a lot of mayhem, death. The only thing where I find a little bit of plus point here, because the rest of it has been horrible, but it has allowed us to open up, because if you remember in the pandemic, a lot of books, resources have been opened up and transferred onto the internet. Today, the internet is our source of getting all of them and connecting through diplomacy. That is why, and I'm quite sure that a lot of countries are investing in India, thinking of the economic idea, but our food has also changed. Our food is all, I mean, Japanese fusion food has come up. South Korean, you're using Samsung. All of you, I mean, I have a phone of a Samsung or an LG. These are products, but they have become part of the culture now. And today, nobody thinks of a phone in the form of a landline telephone. When we say, I'll give you a call, we technically automatically use the idea of the mobile phone, not a standard landline. So, and our governments are actually promoting use of multiple languages because it is a sign of a vibrant culture. I hope it agrees with you, Dr. Prasad.
I have got one more question, but I think you can answer Millie's question. Millie is raising her hand. She
Yes,
wants
Millie.
to ask you something.
Yes, Millie, please go ahead.
Okay. Ma'am, I think Indians, due to the narrow outlooks as audience, they are unable to accept the change, which I think, in my opinion, it is forbidding our freedom to move ahead. So I want to know what are your opinions on this and how do you think that we can change the situation?
See, first of all, my first thing is think about it. Not the word Indian when you're using, you have to take in all economic strata, all cultural strata. So first and foremost, education obviously needs to increase, right? So going to schools, because one of the most horrid side effects of the pandemic was that there has been a large number of school dropouts. People couldn't go to, I mean, kids couldn't go to school. In school, they're not only learning, at home they're learning a mother tongue. In school, they're learning a different tongue, language, right? Because these are schools where there is a standard medium, so automatically bilingual. Today, all over the world, all over India, people can at least, they can say a thank you, a sorry. These are foreign words. Thank you, sorry. Right? So it has already become part of our linguistic approach. At the same time, if you look at it in the, as I said, your central government education, wherever you're having a government, there are, in CBC, you have various foreign languages which you can pick up. Right? See, a previous generation could not avail of these things. As a new generation, you can, and it will help. Also, going to your back to your vernacular will help also, because then you can then connect, and a new cultural identity will grow up. You'll be as proud to be yourself as to get to know about someone else. So that would help in a way. Uh, yes, somebody else also had a question. So, Millie, does it answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Madam Kayati is having her question. Kayati, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, there is a participant, Miss Syed Musrat Fatima. She has a question.
Yes.
How do we relate this blended mode of communication in producing better generation of readers?
Ah, this is one thing that I am also very scared of, because reading is something which is very difficult when it is not in the form of a book. Today, you cannot go to a library, because as I grew up, and I'm still very much fond of libraries, sitting in a library and reading, it not only instills a sense of community, you're sitting there reading, but you cannot go to a bookshop. How do you read then? Get a Kindle? You get a Kindle, you're reading fine. You're reading online, you're reading on your mobile. But there's a problem. It does have an effect on your physical being as well, because I cannot, maybe it's because for me it's a new mode of reading. I cannot read more than 2 hours at a stretch. I start getting headaches. But I am sure that with these new applications, especially there are softwares coming with audiobooks. A lot of audiobooks have come up. We have to be fluid in our interpretation of the word reading, at least from my end, because knowledge is knowledge. Get it from wherever you can. Reading, hearing, books, newspapers, magazines, anything. Nothing is good or bad until you make it good or bad. So, depends on you. Read and read anything that comes to you. Then you decide whether it's good or bad. But yes, language will improve, as your previous presenter said, your vocabulary will also improve. All right, but nowadays I think you have these apps where you can read, and you can get these various modes of software which read out to you audiobooks also. So even if you're sitting in a train or a car, you can just put in an audiobook and listen. That will help also. So, any other? Yes, Navya Srivastav.
Yes, ma'am, I have a question for you. Ma'am, my question to you is, don't you think that these online platforms that provide us with books to read is actually reducing the essence of reading books, holding them in hands, smelling those,
It
rusty
is.
pages?
In a way, it is, definitely. But how do I put it? We are changing with the changing times. And for me, a book reading, because I know that definitely my Kindle has 4,000 books. If I put it in my house, I will have no place to stay. I'll have to move out of the house. But for me, reading is reading. It does take away the essence. I mean, I love the smell of a new book. It is a very weird smell, but I still like it. You flip through the books, right? And it took me quite a long while to, especially on electronic books, when you have to put your finger and flip through it. It was a very irritating sensation. And I think, this is so weird. It's just a flat screen. I'm doing this. It does. But we have now seen that publishers themselves are moving away from a platform of physical books to that of e-books. And if you want the world, and it is difficult also for vernacular publishers in India especially, because vernacular publishers prefer in printing books, because those fonts are not available online. Today you will not find that script online. There are various dialects. So we need to very quickly come up with these for fonts, and there are small publishers all over India who are trying their best to do it, but they are bound by resources. I know various publishers who are trying to bring out vernacular books, but they're very much bound by resources. So I hope this gets resolved and soon. Yes, any query? I think two more queries have come up.
Ma'am, there is a question posted in the chat box by Dr. Satyat Prakash Tripathi. How important is eye contact as a mean of communication while teaching students in a class?
Very important. I cannot emphasize how much important it is. And when suddenly the modes change from a classroom lecture teaching to online teaching, it did become very difficult for us because we are from the humanities, we are from the social sciences, we believe in society, the idea of the human contact. And suddenly we are looking at this black box and thinking, okay, someone is out there. The only good thing is that right now I am providing a lot of material online for them, but it is also this that slowly what I am seeing is that in a classroom of 20 people or 30 people, I am not getting the response where I will look into a person's eye and think, okay, so this person needs a little more. This person will need a bit, some explanation. This is something I'm missing out on, and we are trying to find ways to fulfill this lacuna. And hopefully we'll reach there. But eye contact is absolutely imperative because after all, we're humans. We need to know the reactions of the others. Be it in diplomacy, be it in interpersonal relations, we need to know the reactions of the others. And whatever internet gives you, it cannot fulfill human contact. Yes, any other query? Navya.
Yes, ma'am. Just one more question. It's coming from. So, ma'am, don't you think that this online communication has also helped the introverts a lot to come up and speak? Because obviously, going on a stage, speaking in front of a crowd, it's more difficult. So it has definitely helped us.
Yes, it has. It has helped our people to come up on stage and speak out, introverts. But as I said, everything has pros and cons. I would prefer somebody to speak on the stage, and because I have known students who have had stage frights, and then they would go to debates and physically meet other students of their age. Today, I am very, very sad when I see a generation of fourth graders and fifth graders who can't go out and play with others. They're not developing social skills there. For you as a generation, you've already got your social skills. You're older. But for somebody who's in the fourth and the fifth grade or the third grade, they need people, they need little people around them. And it is very sad when they can't go out to the grounds and play, not just a physical activity, but the contact, the social contact. They need to work as teams. So that I think needs to be addressed somehow. But yes, you're right. Introverts have come out and they've started speaking and started writing, vlogging. Vlogging has become such a huge thing. People are not really blogging; they're vlogging, and I've known um, people after the age of 60 making their own vlogs, their own recipe vlogs, travel vlogs. They're doing that. Absolutely. Uh, yes. Any other queries?
There is
Yes,
one.
ma'am. There is a guest, Miss Jaya Verma. She said many scholars hold this view that translation will help in saving languages and local knowledge. But when a text is translated, some changes are made according to target language. Moreover, people prefer reading in English than in vernacular. Is it moving to language death?
This is something which all linguists are now pondering upon because, as I said, the CIIL Mysore, Central Institute of Indian Languages, Mysore, they came up with these, they come out every year with this research. And as the phrase is lost in translation, it is definitely there, the phrase lost in translation. But for me, I would rather, I mean, not me, I read both in vernacular as well as in English because in my vernacular, there's a huge amount of publications every year. So we do read it. And you have vernacular newspapers. I mean, I find it very strange when people say they do not read vernacular newspapers anymore. Because vernacular newspapers will have to give a form of, they give you a form of impetus to know about that language. And this is something I think it needs to be very much addressed, because death of languages definitely, I mean, death of dialects rather, is happening, because Santali as a dialect is moving out. Till this lady who came up in Jharkhand, she along with the UNESCO uh, wrote the script of the Santali language, created a script, and today there is a UGC net examination on Santali language. So this needs to be done. Otherwise, Manipuri, then a lot of these languages, they need to be saved. Absolutely. Yes, we need to know one international language, but at the same time, vernacular has to be promoted. Otherwise, you are right, it will lose out to a lot of death in languages. So I hope the coming generations learn the importance of vernacular. Because believe me, our grandmothers and grandfathers had lovely stories. They were fun, better than Superman at times. So you will like it. So yes, any other queries?
No, ma'am, I think it's the end of the queries, and all of your answer was so satisfactory. Now I would like Navya to thank all. Over to you, Navya.
Just a minute, Navya, just a minute. Thank you, ma'am, for such a wonderful presentation that you have given. I would like to request you just to give some suggestions from your side for our students how to improve their reading skills. In this time of pandemic when everyone is working virtually, and how far it has become difficult for our students to improve their reading skills.
As communication students, I would first and foremost ask you to read a newspaper every day. Please read physically a newspaper. That comes to your doorsteps. You don't even have to go out. Read a newspaper. The newspaper will not only add to your vocabulary, and give you, you get knowledge, yes. But reading becomes a habit. Every day you pick up a cup of tea and you're reading a newspaper, howsoever. So, and it comes in print, so you get to hold it also for a change. You're not looking at it virtually. Second, you can register on these virtual sites where you can download books. Also, each university all over the world have opened up their libraries where you can register and read 5 books a month. Please do that. These are free libraries. And finally, since you're all academics, JSTOR, and academics of humanities and the social sciences, JSTOR, you can register on JSTOR and read articles. I think there is a cap of 100 articles a month. That's huge. And the Modern Language Association has also made its library free. So please go ahead, read. And reading is something, if you like to look at picture books, read graphic arts. Graphic novels are there. And you can read Mouse, it won the Pulitzer Prize. You can read Persepolis, Marjane Satrapi, there was a movie made on it. So get interested first, go ahead and read. I hope that helps, Dr. Gupta.
Sure, ma'am. I
Madam,
hope
just excuse me, just one thing I would like to add here, madam. This is not my opinion. In one of the previous places where I worked, one of my former colleagues came out with this view. He said, instead of reading just one newspaper, we have to read 2 newspapers, at least the editorial pages, to get the unbiased picture. Because if you read print media now, every newspaper is having some bias. So it's better to read 2 newspapers, especially the editorial pages. This is what one of my colleagues said long time back.
Sir, that is why I read 5. Every day. So the newspapers, magazines, and especially magazines, I remember our grandparents used to keep, my grandmother used to buy these magazines, some for the household. My brother had one magazine of Sports Illustrated. Then we used
Sports
to
Star,
get
Sports Star.
Sports Star. And I had this magazine which was a vernacular, but it was about Tintin and Asterix. So, and also a Bengali comic characters. But we were encouraged by our parents to read. So even if you think you don't have time, believe me, we have a lot of time. We do have a lot of time. Just read.
Madam, this question I wanted to ask you sometime back itself. I think 2 minutes or 5 minutes back, somebody was talking about dead languages. In sociolinguistics, there is a term called dead languages. According to you, will the dead languages get revived? Is
That
there
will
a
be very
possibility?
difficult. That will be very difficult because reviving a dead language means at least having 11 speakers of that language. In India, I mean, that is the idea that the dead language has to have 11 speakers and writers who use it in their everyday words. So Latin is not a way of life for anybody I know of. So it is a dead language, therefore. We need at least 11 speakers in the world to have that. So it is difficult. So what we can do is we can learn from them. We can assimilate certain, I won't use the word certain, I mean, it would be wonderful if people were there, like say, I mean, in earlier times, there was Amir Khusro who translated from Farsi into Hindi, and then there was Raja Ram Mohan Roy who knew at least 6-7 languages, and he translated from Farsi to Sanskrit to English to Hindi. So a lot of this, it would be lovely if we have more polyglots in this world who would be able to translate. At least those won't get lost then.
Mhm. Madam, since you have done your PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University, I would like to ask you this question. Sometime back, I read this article in the newspaper. One of the research scholars went to this Andaman island to find out about the tribals, and he spent time with the tribals. He learned the language, and he brought the language back. He brought the language back, and for this, one should have passion to do research. Since our students are doing NTCC projects, I think you also know this. You can tell them something about enhancing the quality of research. Just simple tips which they can follow. I know it's very difficult to follow, but from your side, what can you tell us?
My simple tips is when you are writing a thesis statement, see, we use this term, thesis evidence analysis. Even if you're writing one paragraph and you say the sky is blue, that is your thesis statement. Evidence is what you're reading. So bring that evidence from the text to prove that the sky is blue. And then finally, your analysis as to why is the sky blue? Is the sky really blue, or is it reflecting the oceans around you? So a thesis, it is called the TEA method. So thesis evidence analysis. Even if you're writing one paragraph, ensure that that is what it is. And when you're giving a title, the title of any project is a what, why, when, where, how. What is the topic? Why are you writing the topic? It can also come in introduction, but you definitely give the when. Because if you say, I am writing on postmodernism, it's huge. Which part of postmodernism are you writing about? So, or feminism, which aspect of it? So that helps.
Yes, Dr. Madhura,
Yes.
initially when we really followed the TEA methods, well, I had my, I mean, I'm antediluvian in terms of years, but one of our Irish nuns in school at Loreto in the year 1968, who was doing her PhD from Dublin, she would always write that she would always teach us that whenever you're doing an analysis, you must write thesis, evidence, and analysis, right? When I came to Delhi University in 1972 to do my BA English Honours at Lady Shri Ram College, well, I thought that the best method was what Karl Marx said: thesis, antithesis, and synthesis.
Ah, that is perfect, madam.
Because thesis is after a certain level of having studied criticism and analysis, thesis is something that you have arrived at your own perception and conviction. And when you argue out your own conviction and perception, that is when you question yourself, the very first factor on to going into higher studies and, deliberations, the antithesis has to come from your sources of research, so that you will learn to contradict your own ideas. And when you have contradicted your own ideas, your perception acquires a broad spectrum, and that becomes your synthesis. Synthesis means these are your perceptions, you counter argue them, they become the antithesis, and the synthesis gives you a whole of your, or a holistic outlook of the entire topic of research. But I'm so glad that, this TEA is still remembered, because I thought that when I moved away so many years ahead of what our Irish nuns taught us, people must have forgotten. But I feel so happy to hear from your mouth that TEA is still being talked of by our teachers.
Thank
Because,
you so
that's the first step that we learned, that whatever you have, that's your thesis. Find evidences and then analyze. That is how we did our criticism in poetry.
Absolutely, ma'am.
So I'm so glad you brought this back to the students. I thought that was an old-fashioned, outdated mode, But I'm so glad to hear that from you. Thank you so much, Dr. Madhur, for bringing this, I think, 40-year, 50-year-old memory back to my mind.
Thank you, Professor Rai. This is actually because if we don't have our basics correct, we cannot build upon new things. That's the problem we face every day.
Yes, we're moving ahead and forgetting our simpler, foundations from where we started in school. Probably, all this should be ingrilled, and a delight be sought at school level, and then the mind moves ahead. But somehow, I don't mean to criticize. There are a lot of other things which the children are learning at school. But for students of humanities and social sciences to grow, the aesthetics and the basics are not very clear. And that is why probably children have a lot of problems when they're writing their term papers and dissertations,
Absolutely. So I hope that you all, as Professor Ray said, that we can go back to the basics, go through the tea. It's a cup of tea. Just you'll remember it. It's a cup of tea. Hope you'll have a cup of tea. You remember it.
Madam Kajal wants to ask one question.
Yes,
Kajal.
Yes, ma'am. I have a question. As we are an undergraduate students and we're living in a world with so much competition, so reading is very essential, and that too with a newspaper. Because I remember when I start reading a newspaper, it takes me a lot of time, 2 hours at least, because I have to grab everything from it. And please, can you elaborate how effectively I can read in a less duration of time, or to read a newspaper more effectively, so, ma'am?
two things. First, as Dr. Prasad said, you can read the opinions paper because opinions are written by very educated people. The newspaper columnist is brought in because of those qualifications, right? Second, read things that interest you first. If you want to look at the what is it called, those star signs, you want to read what is happening in Sagittarius or Aquarian, read that first. Then go to this. If you like sports, I personally do not like sports. I like to read my star sign first, which tells me that every day is going to be a bad day. But it's fun to read it first and prove them wrong. Then I move on to the opinions pages. Then I move on to, I think it all depends on what you grew up in the practice, because I grew up with a grandfather, and my grandfather insisted I read a newspaper every day. So it became a habit. I
I
know.
agree with you, Dr. Madhura. I totally agree with you. When we did our senior Cambridge, our Hindi was, to say the least, disastrous. And when I grew up at an early age, I got married and I had to learn Hindi. And not only Hindi, but people around me were talking in Bhojpuri. And I didn't want to be left out, so I wanted to learn Bhojpuri also. So I asked my mother-in-law, she said, "You want to learn Hindi? Take a Hindi newspaper and read out the headlines to me." It was a difficult task because we learned Hindi as, Chidiya chehchahata hai ya chidiya chehchahati hai. That was the level of Hindi we were taught in senior Cambridge. So newspapers are the best way to learn a language. And by reading out the headlines, sometimes I could not articulate that word. So articulating the word in the language, and then naturally when you articulate, you want to know the exact terms of meaning. So, and as Dr. Madhura said, we all grew up that, that I would, that as I said, since times are so uncertain, not that we believe in the astro predictions, I love to read it all right. Probably that's something that gives me a little bit of strength to face the day. Then I go to the speaking tree, because I love, if it is a Times of India, I love to read that. Then if it is Indian Express, I go to the third page where the views are given, and there are basically write-ups on world issues, whether it is, and what the best thing about this third and fourth page issues is that somehow it connects the global to the local rather than the local reconnecting to the global. So I find that very relevant, and I feel that I know something about the world opinion as well as our own, background of, say, politics or social opinions or anthropological opinions, things which I would not ordinarily get to know if I did not have the newspaper. So I think the best friend you can have is a newspaper. When the books are not around, it's definitely a very good companion. And I'm so glad, Dr. Madhura, you're bringing out so many things which are relating me and taking me back to my childhood. So I don't feel that my education was really it was out of context, and it was outdated.
Not at all. Not at all, ma'am. It's all because how can education be outdated? An educated person is there. Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. So,
Madhura Madam, just one line I would like to add to what our Honorable Director, Professor Dr. Kumkum Ray said. Once upon a time, there was reading for pleasure. There was reading for pleasure. Ma'am has read so many things just for the sheer happiness she got. But if you look at the younger generation, I'm talking about the present generation. I'm teaching third year students, I teach final year students. What I notice, they start preparing for competitive exams. And even when we give really wonderful lectures, their mind always thinks about competitive exams. They read with a purpose. They read with a purpose. This point I was discussing with one of my colleagues yesterday, when my colleague said, "Sir, I have started my preparation for the forthcoming semester." I just told the person, "Madam, I'm unable to do that. I just read for pleasure. But you people read with a purpose. When you read with a purpose, you go towards the target. But when you read for pleasure, you try to swim in the ocean."
I think, Dr. Prasad, there has to be a blending of both. Let us not forget that we are nearer our targets when the children are still wanting to reach out. So there will have to be a blending. But of course, whatever is done with a sense of purpose along with pleasure is more fruitful than only just cut and dried purpose. So I think for the age group they are in, they all have their dreams, their ambitions, and it's a tough world today also. And then our only pleasures or companions were books and playing out physically. Today they have so many alternatives, so they too are at a juncture where they don't know whether it should be this or it should be that.
also,
Proper blending is important. That's what you were saying.
If I may put in a personal note here,
please do.
After reading a book on, say, a Foucault or a Lacan, then suddenly I would read one little book of 180 pages of a Mills and Mons. It refreshes the mind. So it also depends on how you put in a little things in there. Because if you want to read say a John Le Carre or a Perry Mason or something like that, suddenly in between, even a two states would do, whichever. Of course, I wouldn't recommend that. I mean, read something nice would be nice. So you read a good heavy book, then suddenly put in a little tiny book in it which will give you pleasure. That's it.
Yeah,
Just
that's
one
so
line,
true.
madam. Just one line, madam. This book which you referred just now, that book I read 17 or 18 years back. It's about the love story between a South Indian girl and a North Indian boy. But after reading that particular book, I decided hereafter I am not going to go for such books. Anyway, you put it very mildly. You put it very mildly. What I am trying to tell you, just for pleasure, we can read any book. They can
Any,
do any book. That's what you are trying to say.
yes, they can do any book.
Ah,
You can pick
Dr. Prasad,
ah.
probably all sexes are equal. I believe in the equality of sexes. But there is something which is different. We are wired differently. Girls are wired differently than men, and I'm proud to say that. It doesn't mean that they are not equal in terms of equality, but they're wired differently. And that's the beauty of it. So, as girls and as romantic girls, we love to read the Mills and Boons, and I'm very very happy to hear that, Madhura. I thought Mills and Boons had disappeared, replaced by new authors like Harry Potter's and
oh
whatnot.
no,
But
madam,
I
I am
still
both of
I
that.
still find pleasure in reading Mills and Boons for the simple reason that they are so very they're so very dreamy, and they transport you into another world which is full of romanticism, full of chivalry that you don't see around. There are dark handsome men who are fawning all over you, and it's a beautiful feeling that you have after reading a Mills and Boone, even at my age. So I think men and women are wired a little differently. It doesn't mean that they are superior, but
No, it's just
definitely they are.
grammatically correct English. It's just grammatically correct English. So read whatever you feel is
Can,
in good
yes.
English. So it
Yeah.
doesn't matter whether you're reading, as I said,
A
it could be John
romance
Le
or
Carre,
yeah,
a
perfect.
thriller. Read your Dan Brown's beautiful
Hmm.
ones. So just read them. It's wonderful.
Madam,
Yeah,
just I deviated from what I wanted to tell you. I didn't want to speak about that book that you mentioned. What I wanted to tell you, in that book, the author mentions about one habit of people from South, and going to the shop, getting the Hindu newspaper early in the morning. He makes fun of this. He
Are
makes
you
fun
talking
of.
about Bhagat's book? Are you talking about Bhagat's book then?
I'm talking about two states, madam. I'm talking about
Uh-huh.
two states.
yes, yes.
In that book, he
Chetan
makes
Bhagat.
Chetan Bhagat. He makes fun of the people from South, where he is making fun of the father-in-law and others during the time of his marriage. They all have the Hindu paper in their hands and they try to read. But one thing I will tell you, there is no match for this paper. I'm not advocating this paper. Even now, I remember the headlines that I read 20 years or 25 years back. I do not know. When Australia was playing a test match against India, Australia's David Boone was always the thorn in India's flesh. The caption came out like this: Australia's Boone is India's doom. Australia's boon is India's doom. This is how they give captions, and that is how I got attracted towards English, and I started imitating certain things. But unfortunately, people now, they are slightly going away. That's my personal opinion. I don't I don't know what you people have to say on this. Just this is my observation, madam.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. Because see, today a lot of students read Hindu because it is good for UPSC. They
Ah,
don't read it for
Yes.
the literary idea. But if you look at it, the statesman, the Hindu, then even the older times of India, they
No,
used to have a
and the
grammatically
Telegraph,
correct English.
the Statesman, the
Yes.
Hindu. These were all on our itinerary as established, reputed papers. Even if they arrived 2 days late, we
late.
would read them.
Uh, And there was a Deccan Herald, if I remember. I
Yes,
don't know.
Deccan Herald is gone. It was from Lucknow, but it was wonderful. Like you had the Illustrated Weekly.
Yes.
Was such periodicals and magazines and papers have lost their luster, and media has moved away probably on to post-truth and fake news, which attracts people far more. So,
but they should be able to. I mean, I don't know. Students can start now looking at these magazines like Economic and Political Weekly, the Mainstream. Then they can for literary magazines. For
the
literary
Economic Times.
Yes, a lot of nice, even for literature, you'll find a lot of good magazines coming up every year.
Yes, definitely. They have far more. They have many
And they're all
more
archived on
options
the
on their
internet.
plate than we had.
So it's all archived on the internet. You can look up any issue if you want to. They're all archived on the internet.
Yes, I agree with you. It's just the fact that how much do you want on your plate and how well do you want your time to be utilized. As I tell my students, every minute and an hour from the age of 17 to 23, if you work hard, you'll enjoy your life all throughout. And if you enjoy from 17 to 23, you will work hard all your life. And I found that to be very true. I wonder if you'll agree with me, Madhura.
Certainly, madam,
My children are
certainly.
all grown up, but I always advocate among my students, my children also, slog out from 17 to 23 if you want to enjoy your life ahead. If you want to enjoy from 17 to 23, then slog all your years ahead. You know? So this is how I would advise my students, make the most of each minute, make the most of each hour. Do something which is worthwhile, whether it's reading, whether it's writing, whether it's playing games, but do everything with a sincerity that you get to the bottom of it, Even if you are a foodie person, get to the bottom of it. Where does the grain come from? Which is the best soil that grows it? Where and how the flavors differentiate and matter? How come, you like arhar ki dal? Which area grows the best of arhar ki dal? Which soil gives the best flavors? Go to the depth of anything that you like. That's how you grow not only your knowledge content, but you grow in your perceptions and comprehensions as well. So that was a wonderful discussion. I'm glad, Dr. Prasad, that you insisted on Dr. Madhura to stay on, because I was, my British and convent manners were holding me back, and I thought we'd be really taking her time into, very mundane discussions. But I'm so glad you pulled her back. And actually, that's a fact that you have to dig in and find out as much as you can draw from your teachers' children, because getting a good resource or getting a knowledgeable faculty is a most difficult thing in days of today.
Thank you so much.
Dig out of them as much.
It's been my absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am, and other participants, for such a genuine conversation. And now I would like to request Kajal to continue.
Okay. So,
I think Navya has already taken the platform to give the vote of thanks for Navya.
yes, okay, so Navya, over to you, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I'm so grateful to have been chosen to deliver the vote of thanks today. A bright and graceful afternoon to our extremely efficient and distinguished Director Professor, Dr. Kumkum Ray. Honorable Chief Guest Dr. Madhura Mukhopadhyay. Outstanding speakers, our management committee, worthy professors, my dear friends, and the wonderful audience that we have today. I bow my head in veneration to the Almighty for showering His benedictions on all of us. I must remark a proficient sense of gratefulness to our admirable and eminent Director Professor, Dr. Kumkum Ray, for taking the initiative of being the convener of this great 5-day event. On behalf of Amity School of Languages and the entire management group here, I express my heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Madhura Mukhopadhyay for sharing your words of wisdom with us. That will definitely prove to be a guiding light for all of us in future. I extend my generous thanks to our faculty coordinators, Dr. ABR Prasad and Dr. Archana Gupta, for their wholehearted and tireless support to all the students making this event possible. I'm thankful to all the participants from various universities in different parts of the country for gracing the event with their presence. I would also like to thank our extremely industrious student coordinator, Ms. Ilma Khan, for being a constant support throughout the event. I also want to thank Ms. Afifa Sharif, Ms. Ilma Khan, Ms. Richa Rajput, Mr. Dipanshu Pandey, who played a pivotal role as technical members on day 4 of the workshop. Thank you to all the performers of the day 4 of the workshop, that is Mr. Dipanshu Pandey, Ms. Anushka Biswas, Ms. Millie Singh, Ms. Kajal Singh, and Ms. Khyati Gupta for holding the event together. Lastly, I would like to thank all the members of Amity School of Languages Department and the faculty members of other institutes too for gracing this event and making it a huge success. If you are a good listener, the job is half done. Thank you all for being such a great audience, for your cooperation leading to the smooth conduct of the event. Thank you and have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you so much, Navya. Now I would like to request you all to switch on your camera so we can take a picture of it and cherish these memories. And I would like you all to fill the feedback form which has already been posted in the chat box, and it will be active after the event ends. Thank you so much everyone for your active participation and cooperation. It gave us a great opportunity to share our efforts and endeavors with you all. Have a nice day.
I think we can leave.
Thank you so much, sir. Then I'll be logging out of this meeting then, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, madam. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Thank you so much again. It was a very nice talk. Really my pleasure. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.